Hi friends, it's Deanna here today, and today I'm coming to you with a tips and trick or hack tutorial. I'm not really sure what to call it, but I think you're gonna enjoy it. I am going to show you how you can add a placket to an existing pattern. So I'm gonna take a pattern here. I already have the front cut out, and I'm gonna show you how you can add a placket to it. A placket is great because you can add it a little accent. You can add buttons. If a neckline is too tight and you want to make it looser, it's a cute thing to do to a top, and I think you're gonna enjoy it. And it's actually easier than you think. So I'm gonna tell you how you can do that and how you can even make up your own placket and all that stuff and how big you want it depending on what you wanna do. So let's get started. All right, friends, the first thing we need to do is figure out how we're gonna create that placket. We gotta create a pattern piece for that placket. So first of all, we need to figure out how big we want to make this placket. Now I put up some buttons on here for show. They're just different sizes. I am actually I'm not even sure if I'm going to add buttons to this because I think it's just a placket for show, just to look cute, but any of these buttons actually will look really cute. But anyway, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to figure out what buttons you're going to use, and that's kind of going to determine how big. My ruler's broken. That's okay, it still works. That's how you're going to determine how wide you want your placket. That's the first thing you want to determine. So you want to at least have like a 1/4 inch beside each each side of the button. So like if my button this is a full inch button, so you want to have like 1.5 inches. You want a placket that's about 1.5 inches wide. So the smaller your button is, the smaller placket you would definitely obviously need. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to go with 1 inch because if I was going to add buttons, if anything, I'll add small buttons to this. So I'm going to say that I want 1 inch placket. So the width is going to be 1 inch, but I'll tell you how we're going to add all that up, because then we're going to have to also take in seam allowance for when we sew. So, but I'm just going to say that the finished result, the finished width of my placket is going to be 1 inch. Now we need to talk about the length. You know, how many buttons you want to add to it, how long in proportion to your bodice you want it, and everything like that. I'm just going to go for 5 inches. I feel like that's a pretty good length for me in proportion to my top that I'm making. And again, that's all up to you, however you want to do it. I'm going to write this down because if I don't write it down, I will forget. You all know that. So now we're going to actually work on cutting out a pattern piece for the placket. All right, so I have here a scrap piece of paper, one that I printed a pattern on and it didn't work. So I'm just using that as a piece of paper to create my pattern piece. So I remember my length was 2 inches. And so for my length, we're going to actually add about 2 inches. And really that's up to you how much you want to add. You're going to end up trimming that. That's just the piece that's going to hang up at the bottom. And that's the piece that you're going to kind of fold over and help you kind of get track of it at the bottom. Like you'll have like a little triangle piece at the bottom. Anyway, you'll see that at the end. The bigger you want to make it or whatever, if you want more room to wiggle around with or whatever, that's going to be your extra 2 inches. You'll trim a lot of that off at the end, so really it doesn't really matter. I think 2 inches is just a good one to add. So that's going to be, the length is going to be 8 inches. Now the width, we said I want to have a 1 inch wide placket. So the one thing that we need to take in consideration too is the fact that we need to add seam allowance for when we sew it on. And I'm gonna add a 1/2 inch seam allowance because of the fact that I'm gonna do like a 1/4 inch seam allowance on each side. So that's 1/2 inch. So so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the width the inches, how wide I want it. I'm going to times that by 5 because I'm going to do like a fold over. And so I'm going to have one side and another side overlapping, and you'll see that later. So I want to have 5 times the width. So since I wanted 1 inch, I'm going to go to 5 inches. But I want the seam allowance, so I'm gonna do 5.5 because I'm adding that seam allowance. Don't times it by 5 with the seam allowance already. Times it by 5 first and then add the seam allowance. So I'm gonna go ahead and draw that on here and show you what we'll do next. Okay, now I've got my pattern piece. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fold this in half to find my center. basically, I mean, you could measure it and find the center, and then I'm gonna mark it. Now, once that center is drawn, I'm going to grab how wide my placket is going to be. So my placket's going to be 1 inch wide, right? My placket. But whatever your placket's going to be, we're going to pretty much place that placket right here in the center, in between this center line. So because my placket is 1 inch, I'm going out 1/2 inch on each direction. So I'm going 0.5 this way, 0.5 this way. Now, obviously, if you wanted a 2-inch placket, you would go 1 inch this way, 1 inch this way. But since I'm doing a 1 inch placket, I'm going 1/2 and 1/2. And then I'm going to go down to the size that I want my placket to be. So my placket, I said I wanted a 6-inch placket, so I'm just going down to my 6 inches. All right, so now we have our placket guide. This is gonna be our placket piece. We're gonna cut out a big piece out of this, of our fabric, and interfacing, because it's good to add interfacing. Even if you're using knit or woven, I forgot to mention that you can do this with knit or woven. So you're gonna cut a box out this way, but this is going to be your guide for when we go to sew it on. So let me cut fabric and interfacing, and then I'm going to put interfacing to the wrong side of the fabric. I'm using fusible interfacing. It's a light fusible interfacing, so it's got the fusible stuff on there, so I'm just attaching it however you attach that fusible interfacing. Some people like to use get it wet. I just use a lot of steam on my iron, and it seems to work just fine. Now I'm going to basically transfer all those same markings to my placket that I have on my pattern piece. So like the 1/2 and then the actual placket lines. Now I've grabbed my bodice and folded it in half, because we're basically also going to transfer that center mark to our bodice. So I am kind of giving it a steam, so it's easier for me to see it from the once I'm gonna mark it. So that this is just the center fold, front fold of my bodice. So right there you can see this is the wrong side of my fabric, and you can see my center fold right there. We're going to grab this placket and I'm gonna place it right on top at that center fold, so that the center fold is matching this center fold right here, and we're going to place it right on top right there. And then we're going to go over to our sewing machine and we're going to sew along this stitch line right here. So we're going to go down, over, and up, and remember to backstitch on the beginning and the end. You can, this is a knit fabric. This is actually a French terry that I'm using for this tutorial, and I'm going to still be using a straight stitch. So if you're using woven or knit, you can use a straight stitch, because this placket won't be stretched out. That is the reason why we usually use a stretch stitch when we're sewing with knit fabric, because when we stretch a stitch, we don't want it to pop. But because we don't really stretch out this placket, a straight stitch will work just fine. I mean, a straight stitch will work just fine. Get to the end, I'm gonna stop, lift up my foot, leave my needle down, turn the fabric around, make sure that your fabric's still nice and straight and not folded under or anything, and then I'm gonna go back through the bottom and then do the same thing at the corner, stop, lift up my foot, turn around, and go back. All right, now it's been sewn. Now what we're going to do is we're gonna cut open this center line, but before we do so, I am going to mark a 1/2 inch off the bottom, off the edge. And I'm going to go, as we cut, we're gonna cut down to one corner and then the other corner. So as you can see, we're making like this little Y section right there. And when you're doing that, you do not wanna cut your stitches. So you need to be very, very careful. So we're cutting down the middle and all the way to that 1/2 inch point that we created, and then going to the sides. You want to get it really near the thread, but not cutting the thread. And then once that's done, we're going to cut all this seam, all this extra seam over here, and just leave your 1/4 inch seam allowance. Even this little triangle, I'm gonna cut that off too. All right, once that placket is prepped, I'm gonna go to the outer edges and I'm gonna fold in that seam allowance, 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides. Once that's done, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it to the right side. All right, so this is what my front looks like. We're gonna start with the left side, and I'm gonna bring this placket out from the back. And this side right here, see how right here is my seam allowance is folded down, and there's a little seam allowance right here on the front. That seam allowance is gonna go, we're gonna push it towards the placket, and then we're gonna grab this top of the placket and we're gonna fold it right on top of that seam allowance. And we're gonna place that edge on that stitch line. If you can see the stitch line right there, we're gonna place that seam allowance, that edge, right over that stitch, like right on that stitch. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to our sewing machine and we're going to sew a straight stitch right along, like an edge stitch, right along this outer edge. Well, first let's give it a steam so it'll lay down nice and flat. All right, so then what we're going to do is we're going to do that stitch right here along the edge, but we're going to stop right where my placket is going to end. Now remember, our placket, if we hold it this way, here's a piece that pokes out, that's where it's going to stop. That's my 5 inches. Remember, we added 2 inches, so this is where those 2 inches are right now. So we're going to go all the way down to stop at that line right there. So we're going to go stitch it and stop, and you can go ahead and like put a pin right there to help you mark where it is that you're stopping, so you know exactly where you're going to stop right there. So let's go ahead and top stitch that. Okay, as you can see, I've top stitched this down. So now I'm gonna kind of bring this whole placket around to the other side like so. So here it is. You can see, like, here's my folded placket, here's the front, like kind of now making like a little accordion right here. This is the 2 extra inches that we allowed it to have right here. And then here's the other side of my placket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be working this one, kind of coming overlapping this other one. So we're gonna grab this side, and this seam allowance is gonna go towards the placket again, just like we did earlier. And this flap is going to fold right over that again. So now we're going the other opposite way, but they're doing the same thing because they're gonna overlap each other, and that's what's going to create this beautiful placket right here. Okay, and this bottom part right here is going to get sewn out. You're going to trim some of this and sew it to stitch it on, so that part will be finished, but we're going to work on this side. All right, so let me show you once again what I'm doing. I've got this placket already sewn together, and these pieces are folded under right here. And you can, this is because this is thicker fabric, it's a little bit thick, so you can kind of keep steaming it down. We're going to get rid of some of this bulk in a little bit, so don't worry about it too much. Okay, so that's done. Now on this side again, this is going to be folded right on top. So I'm folding this seam allowance towards my inside, towards my placket, and then I'm folding this placket over, and I'm going to stitch it on top right at that seam line like we did on the other side. And these two are going to be overlapped on each other like so, because then we're going to trim this, and we're going to cut a little bit of the back so that when we fold this over, we're going to trim first, then when we fold it over, it'll be kind of like this, and our placket will be finished. So you can see that it's going to look super cute. So I'm going to go ahead and first I'm going to top stitch, and I'm going to stop here at the end as well, like I did on this side. So I'm going to go down. Now make sure that you're not stitching these two together. All you're doing is you're just stitching this one right at that seam line. I hope that's making sense. But yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and stitch that down first, and then we'll come back and finish this up, and we'll be done with our placket. Alrighty friends, we're almost done with this beautiful placket. Okay, so I've got my pieces right here folded over. I've got my piece I just stitched that's gonna come right over and create that placket. Now we just need to finish it up down here. So now we've got this huge long piece of extra material, like I told you, you would, because we made it longer than it needed to be. So you got to make sure that they're lined up together. And then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim a little bit off. So I'm going to measure about 1.25 inches. I don't know where I did with my ruler. Okay, let's use this big old thing. From where I stopped stitching, so about 1.25 inches. 1.25 inches. And then I have all this, and I'm just gonna kind of trim that off. Now, once I trim that off, you saw how thick that was, especially because I'm using this thicker knit fabric. So that's a lot of bulk. This is going to kind of get under stitched right here like this and top stitched. So what I want to do is I'm going to get rid of some of this bulkiness over here so that it doesn't become super bulky. So like this bottom layers, not this top layers, I'm going to kind of cut off about 1/4 inch off of it. Like I'm literally just chopping it off. So then that way I'm going to line up these very nicely, and then I'm going to fold this under like so. And that's going to create my placket. Hold on, I'm gonna trim a little bit more because it's thick. All right, so now you're going to line them up nice and even, nice and even. And then I'm going to, that edge right there, fold it under where I did that 1/4 inch chopped off, that chopped off 1/4 inch. And then what we're going to do is right here at this bottom placket area, make sure your fabric is nice and straight. You may want to give it a steam before you sew it up. Right here at this area, we're going to create like a little square. I guess I could draw it on there with my water soluble marker so you can really see it. I probably should do that. Sometimes I don't like to draw on my, because I'm always kind of scared that it's not going to come off, but it hasn't let me down. This one that I have hasn't let me down yet, but it's still kind of scary. Now, I will tell you, this part is a little bit more difficult with, like, I'm using a knit fabric because it sometimes wants to wrinkle up or something like that. So you want to make sure that you're giving it good steam so it doesn't give you puckers and stuff like that. So I'm gonna steam it right here. Let me open this up and give it a good steam first. Like back here, this folded edge so it's not super bulky. Tuck it in. You're gonna kind of mess around with it a little bit, give it some good steamings, which I haven't been doing, to make sure that they're nice and even. Really, that's the best tip I can give you working. Like if you're doing this with a woven, it will be very easy to do because woven is more pliable, I think. But with knit, because it kind of tends to move around and be soft, that's why steaming comes in so handy. So there it is, it's placed together. That's what it's gonna look like at the end. Okay, so I'm gonna show you with my water soluble marker. We're gonna make like a, starting at the edge where we stopped, we're making like this little like square right here at the bottom. I'm not doing a very good job. Like you can do a better job if you actually trace it nicely. I'm just kind of hand drawing it. And we're gonna make like a little X. So we're tacking this down. So if you want to draw it, you can. If you don't want to draw it and you want to just go ahead and go for it, you can just go ahead and go for it. That's what I usually do, but I drew it. And then we're going to go ahead with our sewing machine and just sew that on. All right, our placket is completed. Then we'll just add the buttons. If you want to do buttons, that will wash off. Hopefully, I think it will. And you can add buttons to that, or you can just leave it like as an open thing, like an extra option if you want to do it shorter and just like a little opening and that's it. that is super cute, super adorable. All right, we are finished with that placket. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please comment, like, share, subscribe if you haven't. I am going to, I don't know why, but when I cut out this pattern, I cut it out with a scrap like piece of fabric. So I don't have enough for the back, and I thought, why would I do that? Because I want to make a full top out of this now that I did this placket. So come next time, and I'm going to probably use another coordinating fabric to create the back and the sleeve. Well, this is a tank, so create the rest, and then together we'll work on creating that new neckline, because obviously neckband, because obviously you're going to need something a little bit different than just the neckband, because you're going to want it to split open. You don't want to just put a neckband that's going to close it, unless you want it to. You just want this to be a full placket. You can definitely do that. So that's one thing I'll say right now. If this is all you wanted, if you just want it to have that full placket right here so it looks cute, you can add some buttons, but you don't really even need the placket to open, you can go ahead now and add your neckband right over that. Because you're overlapping it, you're going right back to the same width of your neck, so you can do that. If not, then it's a little bit different how you sew it on. So we'll go over that next time when I come back and finish my top. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please comment, like, share, subscribe if you haven't, so you never miss any of our tutorials. Let me know below if you have any questions about anything that I did, or if you have other things that you want me to try and you say, I don't know how to do this, please help me, and I will. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all next time.